Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Pearls and Politics Podcast, where we are polished and poised for greatness and impact. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Kahala, and I'm your host. Today, we will continue our journey full steam ahead into Election Day, which is Tuesday, November 8th of this year. And today, we're going to have a conversation about the African American church and its role in politics, how we can be more involved and how we can be more engaged. And with us today is my friend and my second pastor. He laughs at me when I say that because, but he really is my second pastor, Pastor Ron Young.
I really am.
Impact Church St. Louis. Hello, Pastor Young.
Well, thank you for having me. I love it. This is awesome and amazing. And thank you for letting me be a part of a good contribution to content to get our people informed.
So tell us about yourself.
Well, I pastor a great congregation in Cahokia Heights, Impact Church St. Louis. We recently just bought a new facility while holding on to those. Thank you.
An amazing facility.
It is. God has been very gracious to us at 1515 Jerome Lane. And been with my lovely wife now. We've been together, married 12 years, and we have two beautiful children. And, God has just been really good and kind to us in our household, and our congregation is growing weekly. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm just blessed and grateful to be able to serve the people of God.
But tell me, are you a member of a Greek letter organization, Pastor Young?
I am very much so a member of a Greek letter organization. I just happen to be wearing the colors, the offset colors. We are crimson and cream. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm a proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. I went over at Alpha Mu, which is in Lincoln U, and I do work and contribute when I can with Belleville O'Fallon alumni chapter.
So I was going to say, here we go, because we go back and forth, you have on my favorite color, which is red, but crimson and cream. And then, of course, I'm wearing my pink today because we all know that I'm a woman of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So we got the diamonds and the pearls together. That's today. Right. And so how do we know each other, Pastor Young?
I think which is odd because over the years of just kind of working in the community, mm-hmm. We built relationship. But the odd thing is one day when we was having a conversation, we literally grew up on the same street, not even 20 houses away from each other, and had no clue.
Idea. Yeah.
Right. So literally you are a homegirl, right? like East St. Louis finest, grew up on the same street. And just the work that we've done over the years, we've just been able to build a relationship that I'm really thankful for.
I am too. We run in a lot of the same circles. Yeah. And it's really weird because you'd be like, politics and pastoring, how does that? But we really have a lot of the same friends. Yeah. A lot of the same former classmates, and then of course your parishioners and people in the political circle. You are just definitely a pastor for the people, and I'm a servant for the people. So again, we just see each other, and whether it's the NAACP or coming campaigning, or being able to come and speak to your congregation, it's just been a lot of different ways that we've come in contact. And so I love Impact Church. You know that. I will sow a seed into Impact and over here and over there. And I just love everything that your church is doing. And so, that's how we know each other. So as we talk about politics and pastoring, I know a lot of pastors are involved and engaged. And then a lot of pastors are like, well, I really don't do politics. So what is your position? How do you feel about politics and how the church can be involved?
Yeah, well, for my personal conviction, I believe that the church should be and could be where necessary involved in what politics looks like and shapes our community, right? So at our church, our underlining theme, which is scripturally based, is to impact the world by imprinting God's image, right? So what does that look like, imprinting God's image in every aspect and arena of life, community, and this world? So we want to, as believers, especially at our local house, to reach people down the hall, around the corner, around the world. And part of that, what that looks like is the political engine that influences our communities, people of color, our local governments, and etc. Because regardless of anyone, if they don't even go to church, they live in a city, right? They live in a state, they live in this country, and they're affected by it. And I think the church has a responsibility to whatever capacity that may be, based off leadership's conviction, to really get us involved in a way to say, hey, we can make a difference and a change. And unfortunately or fortunately, depending on what side of the fence you stand on, politics is very just vital in that, and it affects your people. Because those same people that are affected by those politics, they sit in your pews or your chairs every Sunday. And after they hear this good message, they leave out, and either they don't have enough money to pay their bills or etc. And a lot of that still has to deal with politics. So we don't get around it. It's just about how you address it.
And I love that you said that you can't get around it. So no matter how much we may try to stick our heads in the sand or, kind of turn away, you can't get around it, because what did you say? At the end of the day, you have to be able to pay your light bill or be able to get a job. Yeah. And so there are just so many political issues that impact us directly. And I think a lot of times we try to ignore it or just say, well, I don't agree with everything, so I can't be a part of anything. So how do you feel about people who are like, oh, well, I don't agree with everything this administration does or that administration does, but then it turns into something completely apathetic. Like, then you don't end up doing anything.
Man, that's a good question. Especially living in this space in history that we live in, right? Where you're hearing more and more people becoming more individualized than working in corporate unity. For example, see, that's the reason I don't go to church now. So you stand off to be an individual. Well, politics is always crooked, so I'm not going to vote. So now you leave the corporate entity to live out this individuality. When the real fact of the matter is God has created all of us to be in unity. Everything in creation works together. And so, there are moments where you have your individual space, but these kind of efforts don't affect you just as an individual. It affects us as a corporate entity. It doesn't matter what your faith is. It doesn't matter what your color is. There are politics that affect us all, and we have to have the mindset, or probably just look at it a little more closely, to say, how does my individual effort, whether it's through voting, whether it's through marching or whatever, contributes to the larger sum? Sometimes we build houses in the tree and we live there forgetting there's a whole forest. And so I think that's probably that move with politics for someone who says, hey, I'm just going to remove myself from it totally and live in my house. But the thing is, you not contributing doesn't stop the engine from moving. And so now people are affected, and you could have been that one or part of the sum, to help make a progressive change. There is nothing perfect. So if someone is looking for a utopia as to why they won't, then you won't do anything. So even when you buy a new car and you driving and you liking it and loving it, you get a letter down the road. You need to bring your car in because there's a defect. There's a recall, right? Because we got a defect with this certain part. So, but it doesn't stop you from driving, and it doesn't stop you from buying cars. So why is it stopping you from going to church, or why is it stopping you from being involved politically in your community?
Exactly. So much of what you just said, there's so much to unpack from that, because again, like you said, oh, well, I don't like this, so I'm not going to do anything. Oh, I don't like, oh, well, so I'm going to stop going to church. And historically, the church, particularly the Black church, has been involved.
Yeah.
And I mean, look at Reverend King, Dr. Martin Luther King, and, you know, just the pioneers. A lot of that was through the church. And so why did we get away from that? Like, what stopped us from saying, oh, well, we're going to keep the Ebenezer movement going? What about us changed that, you know, through the decades and through the years that made us say, well, you know what? No, that was, you know, Dr. King. That's not going to be us.
Yeah. Well, the short end of a long story, I think, is more comfort, less accountability, right? We saw some progressive changes and we got comfortable in those changes over time. And then we started holding our officials and even the people in our own community less accountable because we were more consumed with comfortability, right? And when you look at it from that perspective, I think it's really just trickling down more and more into the generations. And that the comfort, I think in some ways we allowed to become a distraction, that there's still a larger picture, right? And what I mean by that, the fact that people still don't see the real need to vote after what our ancestors been through. And I'm not even talking about just from the civil rights era. I'm talking about from the moment the 15th Amendment was amended for Black people to vote in 1870, like 5 years after. Not even realize the effect of what it looked like then till, you know, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So you're talking about it took 95 years for those adjustments. And we've gotten so comfortable that from 65 until now, we're still not even paying attention to the distractions that have been put in there to unmotivate us to vote, to unmotivate the church to be as active, when the fact of the matter is we're still under the same systematic attack of racism, especially when it comes to Black people with voting. So believe it or not, the powers that be that are enemies against us, they love to hear you say, why vote? They love to hear you say, I don't see the point. They love to hear you say, my vote doesn't count, right? Because they see that you are blinded and have subscribed to the comforts or have been so discouraged that you don't understand that the chaos we are creating is for us to create an order that you will have to live by. So I think, you know, we just, I hate to say this like this because it's been overly used, but wake up, right? We got like get woke for real.
For real. Yeah. Like not fake woke, but for real.
Yeah.
Because what you said, all of that was important because again, what did you say? The decades that it took. And then kind of being lulled into a sense of being comfortable. And then you're slapped with the George Floyds and the Breonnas and all the things that come. And then it's just like, oh, wait a minute. But you're like, for years, this has been not just necessarily that, but there, like you said, there's been the disenfranchisement. It's been the voter suppression. It's been, you know, the need for affirmative action because, you know, it's the predatory lending. It's all these things that have been going on. And then when you're finally slapped, it's like, oh, but that's been going on forever. That's been,
absolutely,
you know, we can't get where we want to get or where we need to get as a people while many other groups of people are advancing and we're either sitting still, and that's the best case scenario, or just completely being dragged back because we're not paying attention. And so then something traumatic has to come in order for you to start paying attention. And then it takes a Pastor Young to get in the pulpit on Sunday and tell you, like, it took a slap because this has been going on for this amount of time. And so how do we then encourage, especially the young voter, because so many people in our age group or our parents' age group, they're registered and they vote. But there is this generation, you can, whatever the letters are at this point, but like when Lady Granger, when we were speaking, the 17 through like 25, because in the state of Illinois, if you're 18 by November 8th, you can register to vote now. You can register. So there's that 17 and 25 that's in the millions that they're not, because what did you say? That's the group that doesn't believe. Mm-hmm. And so how do we as a community, and then how can the African American church get involved in any of the subsets, but particularly that one?
Well, I think when you talk about that subset, you have to address their culture, right? Mm-hmm. Not saying our age, but the range, we're in our 40s, mm-hmm. right? And we come from a different generation of interest, a different generation of education and morals and values. We had to get things differently. For example, my daughter, Lord have mercy, she's 11. We bought her a cell phone yesterday for her birthday.
He has the most amazing girls, by the way.
I do. And, I was saying, man, I probably got my first pager maybe 15, 16.
I had a pager.
And it's like, dude, like.
And it was just numbers at the time. Yeah.
But we survived. Mm-hmm. If you were at home and you were trying to get a phone call, if you weren't at home when you missed it, somebody wrote you a note or whatever, you call back when you get, But now the interest is in their pocket, right? Mm-hmm. That phone, because it's more than just calling, it's an access to information. Mm-hmm. Like, they don't know anything about a Dewey Decimal System and how to go, but it's at the palm of their fingertips through the social media lens, through the Googling, through they have in some cases, information overload. So absolutely. So the tactic is, how do we now address substance in combination with their interests, right? Which is your TikToks, for us, it was BET, MTV. And it was, rocking the vote, because they were aiming the content at what we know you watch.
Right, at us directly.
And so that's like one of my fears, like for some, I hate to say this, I say this respectfully, antiquated congregations who don't believe or subscribe to that, you telling them to show up on a Wednesday so I could talk to you about voting, that ain't gonna cut it.
No.
It's really studying the generation that we live in or that's coming up, and really doing a poll. And it has to be grassrooted, it has to be strategic, and it has to be intentional on how do we supply substance where a lot of things that they do are mindless. Mm-hmm. And it's
wow.
I think it's just it's really that simple but complex at the same time. And that is the short end of a long story, because that gets really, it's a lot of layers to what you asked.
It is. And I think that's something that obviously off camera we need to delve into, and then obviously keep revisiting, because I love the way you said that, because I have a 14-year-old. So I have a a teen as well. My first teen, and so much of what they do is mindless.
It is.
And I mean, just this morning, he has to be at band and all these other places. And I'm like, can you get moving? Like, you have all this stuff. I mean, we have, a little bit of past due work we need. I'm like, but if he had gotten a hold of that phone, it just would have been, but like you said, so much of what they do is just mindless. And if we could get them for a second in that mindlessness with what you said, substance, I think that would do so much for so many, because sometimes, but when you think of any age group, right? I'm not gonna lie, I love Netflix, I love a whole bunch of things, that's how I decompress. So I have this, I do whatever I do on my 9 to 5, and I drive home, and then, I'm like, oh, that is my little bit of time. But again, we all engage, whether we, get on ourselves and be like, I got to do better or not, in a little bit of mindlessness. So if we could find in whatever subset, like you said, some substance in that mindlessness, that would really help. And especially in this younger generation, because again, they can move a whole election by themselves.
Oh my gosh.
That demographic is so large from 17 to 25. If they understood the issues with student loan forgiveness, the issues with, rights as a person, your physical autonomy, if they got to understand, all the things that we're dealing with as adults and parents in a younger generation, then again, what did you say? The voter suppression would be at an all-time high because they're like, oh, they're engaged. Oh, they're paying attention. Oh, they're getting informed. Well, we really got to try because, again, that demographic alone, like we talk about the African-American community and the African-American dollar and the power that we have and how if we vote-wise could get registered and mobilized. Again, we've seen how the African-American vote in 20. The African-American woman vote in 20. Stacey Abrams, it will be an icon forever. Okay, she will never be forgotten, all right, at this point. So we just need to figure out, like you said, that's just one method that could work so well if we could sit up and at least in that. And then when that's mastered, then you move on to something else. But you have to keep trying because if not, you just got these whole demographics of people that are just not engaged. I will never forget in 20, that was the last election that I ran. And it was myself and LaToya and some other people that I love on the ballot. And we were knocking doors in Washington Park. And there were these gentlemen, we'll say, and it was like a Sunday afternoon and they were just kind of hanging out and we were talking to them. And that was during a time where some stimulus checks had come out. And their position was they were going to vote for Trump because of like I think it was $1,600 or something at that point. And we were just like, huh? And we just could, vote for who you do what you're going to do, right? Yeah. But don't let that be your only reason. Like, don't look at everybody, what they're talking about, be informed, be educated, but then we were wondering if they were even registered at all, and those are the things that we need to try to, engage and combat. Because again, these were young men hanging out, doing what they were doing. And they were like, yeah, so that's what we gonna do because we got one $1,600 check. And I was just so disheartened because I was just like, you have a right to vote for whoever you want, but I need you to understand all the issues, right?
Yeah.
And be able to make a decision. And if that's still your decision at the end of the day, but for me to say, that's like what you say about the car. Well, I'm gonna, go out and buy this car, do whatever. Well, only because, I can stick a key in the ignition and turn. Well, but they can all do that. Anybody can send, that's government. Anybody can send you a check. What are the other things?
You collecting debt to do the simplest thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So you just have to understand the whole picture. And I think so many times we don't see the whole picture. And no elected official, no person is perfect. We talked about that in a previous episode, that you have to be able to understand that, nobody's a unicorn, right? But you have to know what best, would you say, morally, educationally, just in core value, what lines up with what you believe the most, because it's never going to be a perfect situation. But being able to be educated and informed is the end goal.
Man, you said so much to unpack. Like, man, you said a lot. but I will great stuff. I want to add this to what you said, because really, so there's this generational gap that most people don't even know about. You could look it up. And I think it's between like 1977 and 1981. If you was born between 77 and 81, you're technically considered an exennial.
Okay.
Even though I think 81, I think it's the end of Generation X, right? Then you move into the millennials. But the reason they call it exennials is because those of us who were born in that era, we have core values of Gen X, but we understand concepts of
the millennials.
Right? Yeah. So because we're the Atari and Nintendo people, but we were also the go outside and play people, right? So we weren't. And I say that to say the burden of making that transition is not on the boomers.
Okay.
It's on our generation. That people, those of us who have these moral values but understand these concepts, have to translate that over, because we shouldn't be tone deaf to what they're going through. And to be honest, this whole millennial concept is outdated. We're in a new generation now. Okay. And so there's like a Gen Y, Gen Z, you know, and if you keep focusing on just millennials, that 17-year-old group, that's not a millennial group.
No.
That's a new generation, right? And most people, and you may mention this, they don't even know about, hey, if I'm turning 18 by this date, I could already register. And they don't even realize with voter suppression that they are strategically withholding that information from certain communities so you don't vote.
Exactly.
Like it's a whole, I don't want to go off into it, but there's a whole method and scheme. Listen, Satan is cunning. You said like until it slap you in the face. He's already been working through processes of oppression before you notice you are oppressed.
Right, before you ever get the slap. It's too late by the time you get the slap. It's funny that you would mention that, because also this past, most recent legislature, there is a voting legislation that came out. And now in the state of Illinois, if you are in school, if you're in high school, just like you have to be allowed as an adult or a working person 2 hours off to vote, you now, thanks to the legislation of Rep. Greenwood and Belt and all of them, now the school has to let you out to vote.
That's
And I didn't really think, I was like, well, they're a kid. But, I loved it, but I'm thinking, but somebody had an excellent point. Just think about your son in the band. And so, because I'm like, polls are open till 7. I said, that's awesome. They're expanding it. They said, so when he's 17, 18, when he's 18, on election day, he's got after school activity that may not be over to 6 or 7 o'clock. So he won't vote if this legislation hadn't been passed.
Yeah.
So many people think that felons can't vote in the state of Illinois. What did you say? He's cunning. It's systematic. You can absolutely vote. You are not disenfranchised afterwards. You can still vote because your vote matters and it counts. And so there are just so many things, like you said, that it's the little foxes.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then we look up and the whole vineyard is burned down. But it started with the little foxes. And so that's so important, what you were saying in terms of being able to navigate that successfully and be that bridge between, 77 and 81 and 82, because again, who else is going to do it? Yeah. Like my mother, bless her heart. I mean, she can barely work her iPhone. Okay. And so I got to do, so I can't, what'd you say? I can't expect that generation to reach clear over us to Anthony when in a couple years when he's able, or to your girls when they're able to vote. But it's got to be somebody.
Absolutely.
It's got to be somebody. And so do you think the church has a place?
Yeah. Church absolutely has a place. And again, I'm speaking from personal conviction, right? Because everybody has, some people think there's no place for it in local assemblies. Where my stance is, biblically, kings and priests always work together, right? Some of the way the nation was swayed from the political side came from the religious leaders of their day. And again, we were more heavily involved, 60s, even 70s, 2000s, not as much. And especially with, pastors in my generations, the ones who we now like have the torch, right? It's not as many of us that are as actively involved in it, even though that's not to say that they don't care about it.
Correct.
But again, for me, my approach to that is that I know that when these people leave out of our seats at Impact Church, they are affected by much more than what you hear in a 30 to an hour sermon, right? 30 minutes to an hour message. And a lot of times when they come back in Sunday after Sunday, a lot of their complaint is really from something that systematically happened to them in the world. It's not always their decision that caused the issue. It's not always the devil just tried to get me. Some of our hardship, especially when you talk about impoverishment and how that's linked to crime and how that's linked to racism and how that's linked to an ideology. Well, how do you infuse this concept within a people? It's through politics. So even when I preach the hope of God, it's against the evil politics of the world, even in an indirect sense. So when we use things, right, like we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers, that's talking about a political system. That's not some devil walking around with horns and a pitchfork. It's talking about we're wrestling against kings and queens who are using a system of politics that God instituted for goodness and instituted for the control of evil in this world. They are misusing that for profit, for gain, enslavement, and etc. And if we don't think the residue of that is affecting us daily, I pastor in Cahokia. It's not the richest, right, financially place in the world or in the state. And so why not inform our people? Now, what you do with that after is on you. But I do think it's a responsibility for me. We have candidates come in all the time. You were one of them at one point. And I don't discriminate. Democrat, Republican, you can say whatever you want to say. But I think it's a part of my responsibility as a pastor to also educate our people or give them access to education, because we want you to have a holistic life. Because if you don't know how to apply the spiritual principles to everyday practice, and that includes who should I vote for, right? And the reason I say that is because you made mention of earlier, well, everything ain't perfect with the person, so I ain't doing none of it. When the children of Israel were instituted in the Old Testament to become a nation finally, God didn't want them to have a king. He just wanted himself to be the king, right? But he allowed that nation to be a nation so that nation can show other nations who Yahweh was. God literally wanted his people to be the super center for everything in life. So he wants us even today as the church. He wants you to not just be a doctor, lawyer, the stuff we say in school. He wants believers to be trash men and women. He wants them to be in politics. He wants us to be involved in how does the world see light in every arena of life when the church subtracts itself from places it needs to be. If you think politics and it's corruption on Capitol Hill, put some believers in there. Like, don't run from that. Embrace that so that God's light can be seen. Even when you go to to vote, you have to vote on your own conviction, but vote as a member of the body of light versus being overly concerned about who's gonna do right and who's gonna do wrong. Some of that stuff is above our pay grade. But you still have a responsibility to God, your ancestors, to yourself, to your community. So why isn't the church more involved in that in this day and age? Because we have become so self-absorbed that we forget it's a whole world that needs to hear our voice in every arena of life, including politics. We got I think it's is it Nikki Bazinski? Yeah. I think she was at Power Change last week. She'll be at our congregation coming up the end of this month. We've had Mike Boss come by before and about, like it. But let people have a choice on what it is that they're doing. We need to. I mean, I can go on about that. Let me stop because we just.
That's why you're here.
We are not informed.
We are not informed,
and we don't even want to be.
No, a lot of times we do not. And when someone tries to inform us, we shut down.
Yeah,
we don't want to hear it. We don't want to come that Sunday, whatever the situation may be, and we have to do better. I tell people all the time, we have so much to gain. But when you have so much to gain, what's the flip side of that? You also have so much to lose. And so if you don't get engaged, if you don't become involved, when you lose, don't complain. When you lose, don't, No. You had every opportunity. Now, if you are engaged and whatever happens, then that's the accountability piece.
Yeah.
Then you can complain. But at the same time, people just are missing the fact that things are under attack. We are losing. And so are you going to sit back until the ultimate loss comes and somebody's knocking on your door, whatever the situation, or your right to worship, whatever the situation may be? There are so many things that can be in jeopardy if, what did you say? You don't have a say if you don't get involved. And I think that the church is still so important in the African-American community. People can try to minimize it. People go, I don't go to church. It's a whole body of folks out here in this kingdom that go to church every Sunday. And then now after the pandemic, the virtual space, I feel it's opened up a whole lot because, you have the people that they're in person, they're virtual. You can be a member of Impact all the way from Dubai at this point.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's opened up a huge space and we have to utilize it. And I agree with you that I believe the church should be wholly involved because the Black church has always been involved and we need to be more involved because a lot of people now in any church, right? So I can get up all day and say what I want to say and bring information. But when Pastor Young get in the pulpit, it's all ears, all eyes, amen, because, and I see that even with my own bishop, I'm like, well, Bishop, I understand that this is what we're trying to do. But when Bishop says it, that's what matters. So we can come together and partner in all types of things, but the church matters, the pulpit matters, and the pastor's word is what matters. Pastor Young said. And so what you said, that voice and that platform that you do use, it's so important because they're going to listen. And we have to be able to get them, what did you say? Not just that 30 to 40 minute or 30 minutes to an hour of that preaching, but that additional information that's going to help you when you leave.
Absolutely. And you know what? I want to add this too on the flip side that could be taboo, but it also helps answer your question further of why isn't the church more involved? And I could tell you this, there are some elected officials, you at the time, that if they asked me to do anything, you already know, Belt, Greenwood, I mean, there's a couple others. You ask me, I'll do it, no problem. Mm-hmm. But one reason, and I put this charge towards those who are politically involved, especially those who are running for office. One reason my generation of pastors, I think, are less involved is because sometimes politicians come off as we just want to use your platform to push our agenda across. Mm-hmm. Because after you came and spoke and said, here's why you should vote for me, we never hear from you again. Mm-hmm. What is it benefiting us as a church in this body and these people who I'm serving every day? Why should I share this platform with you other than me telling them you need to go out and vote this, then, like you are an exception to the rule. Belt is an exception to the rule. Greenwood is, and I'm using these people because, I know we know these same people. I have relationship with them. Mm-hmm. And watch this, even when nothing is going on, mm-hmm. like Greenwood was at our church anniversary. She didn't get up and speak. She didn't do anything. She sat like on the 5th row somewhere to the side. And it's like, yo, you didn't just use our platform, mm-hmm. but you cared about us. Mm-hmm. Like you're trying to figure out how we can do ministry through governmental dollars to help serve this community. How do we, and so some churches are like, other than the fact I get to say, yeah, such came to my church. Mm-hmm. Politicians also have to do a more exceptional job with sharing with us why we should share that platform with you. Because to date, with our generation, it just kind of seems like you just want to get your propaganda across without digging in with us. Mm-hmm. How does it help us for you to say anything over this pulpit? And Exactly. This is something to keep in mind.
No, it is very important. And I hope people hear that and actually apply it, because I am a people person. I mean, I'm just extroverted and I love people, and I come from a family of servants. So it was really easy for me to do that. And I'm all about them 89 blocks, which in my mind include Washington Park, Cahokia Heights, like all those places. And so it was easy for me to want to give back to the place that raised me, to want to do programming, to want to do those things. And so that was something that people would always say, like you just said, oh, Kahala, she always around. She always at a football game. She always gonna come down to the comedy show. She always, because I try to lead by example. I can't say that I'm for you and vote for me and do all these things. And then, after I win, now let me go to my ivory tower on the 3rd floor and do, but no.
And I don't hear from you again until this election time
until this election season again, with my hand shaking
and
my check.
We feel used by that.
Exactly. Yeah. And we have to understand the African-American community's position without dismissing it or being offended by it. If we feel used, we feel used. Yeah. What you gonna do about it? If we feel used, when are you gonna do your due diligence to sit and talk with Pastor Young first? And then when he says, so we gonna, and be like, oh, you don't ever have to worry about not hearing from me again. If the sewer backs up, if, their infrastructure dollars, if that whatever, you will know that your support or your willingness rather to let me use your platform or let me talk to your people, it did not go unappreciated or unnoticed. Yeah. So that's
which is really one major reason you just don't have our generation of pastors interested. We got enough work to do. Mm-hmm. And if you come off like you're pandering for votes, mm-hmm. and I'm just going to be candid about this, especially if you are running for office and you're white. Mm-hmm. Oh, now you want to come to the ghetto. Mm-hmm. Now you want to,
That's right.
Oh, you want to come to our church because you heard about us and you think you get more votes out of us. But then when you get in office, I can't even call you and say, I got this kind of issue in our community. What can you do? Mm-hmm. And our people really have smartened up from this perspective, especially when it comes to people who are running from in different races. We no longer care to be like, look, I'm chummy with the white man. That doesn't matter to us mm-hmm. anymore. Because we are coming out of this concept, at least I pray, but I know our leaders, is your ice is not colder than mine. You put it in the same freezer.
That's right.
So me having you up there to say, oh, look at who I know, that's a self-absorbed, egotistical, nothing comes out of that. But those who are really trying to labor and do ministry, it's like, okay, you want to use this platform. We know ultimately it's to translate into votes, but us using this platform for you to persuade people to vote for you, again, how does that translate? Politicians have to do a better job, because at the end of the day, they know church is important. because we gather. They know the pastor has an influential voice. We know that. And some pastors are just becoming more guarded about their influence. And because if you screw something up or jack something up from my name, my credibility is at stake.
Absolutely.
Because I shared the most influential thing I have, this mic. And so some are just guarded. And I respect that. I get it.
Well, I appreciate all of your very intriguing and just the dialogue today, because again, we want everyone to be engaged. Every demographic, every age group, and we know just from this conversation and from others that we agree wholeheartedly that the African American church has the potential to be influential, and we really want to get back to that space. So we just thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thank you.
We love Impact Church here, and we love Pastor and Lady Young here, and the young girls. I mean, just the videos and all we miss the videos.
I know. It's just been busy. and yes, you do love because her bishop is my friend. That's my brother. He's her 1A covering. I'm her second pastor. And so yes, that she loves Impact. She supports Impact and the work that we attempt to do. Because at the end of the day, right, it takes all of us to make a better world.
Absolutely.
And politics to religion, your two most influential resources, we could do good things if we, focus on it the right way.
That's right. So will you come back?
I will come back. I told you, I gave at least the 3 people list, right? It's a couple of others. Anytime you call, I'm there. Right. If you need me to vacuum this rug as a part of service,
here we go.
It's all that matters, right?
That's right. Well, thank you so much for coming. And
I love it.
I will be at Impact soon.
Yes, do that, please. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for tuning in today to Pearls and Politics podcast, where we are polished and poised for greatness and impact. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and that you'll join us again next week. Until that time, please like, love, share, and subscribe. And we will see you next week. Thank you.